Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasant duty today to introduce today's distinguished speaker, Professor Cyril Vijayasundara. He is currently a research professor attached to the National Institute of Fundamental Studies in Kandy, Sri Lanka, a place that I was familiar with more than 20 years ago. He has served in the Royal Botanical Gardens, Peradeniya, since 1980 and retired as the Director General of the Department of National Botanic Gardens in February 2015. He's also been elected a Fellow of the National Academy of Sciences in Sri Lanka in 2006. He has a practical knowledge of establishing 2 botanical gardens in Sri Lanka, one in Mirijjavila Hambantota, and it was a 300-acre garden, and in Ilukkovita Avisavella, a 105-acre property. The field trip that Rohan announced is relating to this Ilukkovita Avisavella gardens. He's also, not surprisingly, a repeat recipient of the Presidential Award for Scientific Research in 2001, 2002, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2011, and 2012. So that is why I say he's a distinguished speaker today. And some of his academic achievements include a PhD in biology from the City University of New York, a BSc in botany, and an MPhil in botany from the University of Peradeniya. And he's also currently honorary professor at the University of Hong Kong. So it is my great pleasure to invite Professor Cyril Vijayasundara to speak to you this evening.
President and the members of the Wildlife and Nature Protection Society of Sri Lanka, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to deliver this presentation on plant migration. I am privileged to be here for the second time because once before also I gave a presentation to the society, can't remember exactly when, about 5-6 years ago. Now today my task is to discuss or give a presentation on plant migrations. Now usually you start presentations with definitions. There are several definitions for migration, but I like this definition. It's the definition which deals about the spatial distribution. So it says any change in spatial distribution of a plant species through time can be defined as migration. But everything is everywhere if the environment permits. That's what's called the Burgenic law. He's the guy who came up with, who discovered the nitrogen fixation and viruses and various things. Each plant, whatever the plant is, has a unique geography and a migrational history. So you don't find the plant in a place where it was originated. It may have come from some other place, even in the same area or some other country. And you can see geographical patterning. There are different geographical patternings. And it's actually due to an interplay between 2 forces, a positive force and a negative force. The positive force tries to expand the area occupied by a species, and the negative force tries to limit that. The positive force can be considered as the seed dispersal in most cases. Seed, as you know, contains an embryo, a small growing plant enclosed in a packing seed coat, and it also has a food storage. It's something like ready to go thing. The plant can go from one place, a seed can go from one place to another place and establish. For the journey, you are supplied with some food, with few exceptions. Orchids don't have food in their seeds. And the journey can be through air or through water and through a vector or animal or something. Now in this case you can see a plant which seeds that disperse through air, by air, and our very common coconut is adapted to disperse by sea or by water, because there's a lot of buoyancy due to fiber and various things. And there are various tissues, mostly from the maternal part of the seed, from the mother. There are various tissues which are adapted, which are modified to provide mechanisms for this kind of dispersal, maybe wings or various hair, these fiber packed seed coats and things. So those are the things that help a seed to migrate from one place to the other. And then of course you might ask, what about the vegetative propagation, the cuttings and various vegetative means? But these are mostly operate at local level, not from at distant dispersals. The negative force is actually the environmental control, because the environment always comes up with a resistance to germination, and if those forces balance, if there's a balance between the negative force and the positive force, or the forces are equal, the recruitment and motility rates are equal, then of course there's no change in the species border. It doesn't extend or expand or retreat. And if there's a change in environmental control, or if there's a change in dispersal methods, if one force is stronger than the other, then of course you can see a change in the border. Now, in the first, during the first, in the earlier periods, in the past, in the prehistoric times, when the land plants evolved first, the most important thing was actually the dispersal, not the environmental control. And early pteridophytes or pteridosperms and gymnosperms, those are the primitive plants, they were actually dispersed not by wind or water, as we saw in the previous slide. They were mostly dispersed by reptiles. We know about the reptiles that were there during the ancient times. But then later on, during the Cretaceous period, the birds came into the scene, and birds became the most important dispersal agents. Birds ate or they selected attractive seeds and ate them and dispersed from one place to the other. And that actually did a big difference, because reptiles are not as efficient as birds as dispersal agents. So the migration became more vigorous and aggressive, or more efficient after the birds came into the scene. And after Cretaceous, so after about 100 million years ago, came man. And we know that the continents we see today were all joined together in the past, about 200 million years or so. We know that the continents in the southern hemispheres, South America, Africa, Antarctica, India, Australia, Madagascar, and all of these together formed one supercontinent. They were just one landmass. And then there was this free movement or migrations from one place to the other. And you can see the still some evidences. Now if you look at this diagram, you can see in green, you can see the distribution of a particular fern, Glossopteris. It's an extinct fern, Glossopteris, and there were some fossils of Glossopteris in these areas. So actually that is considered as one of the evidences for this theory of continental drift, or these the supercontinents, Gondwana and all. In all these continents you can see fossils of Glossopteris, including in Sri Lanka. In Taboa you can see Permian fossils of Glossopteris. Glossop meaning like tongue. It's actually only a leaf. You can't see anything else. Just the leaf you can see in fossils. In Tabo also recently there was a paper came out in 2016 of on Permian fossils of Glossopteris in Tabo. And as you can see here, an animation of the continental drifts. Different continents moved from the south to the north, and the Indian subcontinent also went north and collided with the other continent, Laurasia, and the impact created the Himalayan mountain, and I'm sure you all know this. And then also, if you look at the tip of India like this, after some time the land bridge between the end and the penultimate area, the southern tip, got separated because of the subsiding of the land bridge. It happened a couple of times, and now of course we can see it's subsided, and although we are on the same plate, the Sri Lanka as an island is now at least on top, separated from India. Some people think that is separate, connected even on top. And we can see because of this connection, or because of this geological history, we were part of the supercontinent Gondwanaland, and then Indian subcontinent went up, and then Sri Lanka got separated from India. And because of that, we have different vegetational or floral elements like Sri Lankan element, Indo-Sri Lankan element, Himalayan element, Malayan element, African element, and also cosmopolitan or pantropical element. So we have different types of plants with different affinities, different origins because of our geological history. And if you look at I was talking about the geographical patterning. There are different plant formations or plant assemblages in different geographical areas, and those unique geological patterns are there because there are barriers which are preventing movement of plants from one continent or one area to the other. So those barriers may be oceans, mountains, deserts, large lakes or rivers.